We are continuing a series within our larger series of the Gospel of Matthew. By now, as we look now at the trial of Jesus and unfold the interest involved and the machinations involved within it. Matthew chapter 27 and verse 19. I will be reading out of the Revised Standard New Testament. Besides, while he was sitting in the judgment seat, his wife sent word for him, "Have nothing to do with this righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream." Have you ever had one of those days? You know what kind of day I'm talking about. It's one of those days when you realize you never, ever should have gotten out of bed. Breakfast is followed by your oldest child regurgitating her Fruit Loops and Pop Tarts all over the kitchen floor. The cleanup of the mess means you are now going to be late for work. You grab the keys and head out the front door, and as you hit the top step and you lose your balance and tumble down. You didn't bother to check the weather this morning, and if you had, you would have realized that there was freezing rain last night. Not only do you find yourself at the bottom of the steps a little bruised and an ego a little tarnished, you now realize you have a car that is covered with a film of ice that's going to need to be scraped down. And here goes a few more minutes of the precious time that you have. You are already late, and now you're going to be even later. You get to work and you find out that the project report that was due next week will be discussed this afternoon because the boss will be away next week. Then, as you are working through your lunch break to catch up on what must be done that day, you get a call from the school, and the school says, "Come and pick up your other child, for your other child is decidedly sick and cannot remain in the school building." Now, I can go on, but the point is, we've all had days like that where what can go wrong can go wrong, and as things fall apart, more things fall apart. And as we try to push to get what we need to get done, we find ourselves more and more behind in our schedule. If we want to understand Pilate and what he's going through in this situation with Jesus, take the first paragraph as an attempt to give you a reconstructive feel. No, I don't think Pilate had a child that ate Fruit Loops and Pop Tarts for breakfast. Don't quote me on that. But I do think that this was one of those days where Pilate had a sense that things were spinning out of control, even as he tried to use his touch to keep things under control. He was having a day where it would have been better if he had never got up. A day in which what could go wrong would go wrong. In the midst of this, he gets a message from his wife. His wife had a dream, and in that dream, she had seen what she had seen about Jesus spooked her, scared her. Now, in order to understand this, we cannot read into this our 20th century understanding of dreams. We have to read this in the cultural context of Pilate's day. In simple terms, what we're saying is that the Roman people were very superstitious. I'm not saying that people do not have a sense in our culture of a dream that it might be a portent of something that might happen. That is true, but not really capturing what Pilate's wife felt and what Pilate would be feeling through her talking of the dream. Because the Romans by nature were extremely superstitious. And so this, at a certain level, would have really thrown a monkey wrench into the whole of the proceedings because he would have, well, not a technical term, he would have been clearly spooked. Pilate would not have dismissed what his wife said. Pilate was approaching the Jesus situation as if it was a normal bit of work. In other words, he was relying on skills and quite possibly the aides around him to do what was a normal part of his duties. One of the problems when we read this passage is we don't quite get how routine and normal this is for Pilate. What do I mean? Not that every day he crucified a savior of the world sort of thing. What I'm saying is that part of his work as governor was to deal with issues such as this. Prisoners, do they live? Do they die? What is the justice required? What is needed? In other words, we have a snapshot from the picture of the everyday life and world of Pilate the governor. The problem, of course, is we don't have any other records because this sort of stuff is not saved. This sort of stuff is not kept. And so we look at this passage and we have one moment in time in Pilate's career which a spotlight is shone on, but we don't really have an ability to compare this with his average and normal days of work. And in that sense, because we don't, we kind of distort what's going on and do not see how this was very typical and very normal as Pilate tried to deal with religious leaders, tried to deal with the governance of the areas, deal with legal issues, tried to push forward the Roman agenda, and all of this. On one level, therefore, we have a man trying to do as usual in what is an unusual event. His talent and the mental equipment he brought to the task at hand was not able to do it. In situations like this, most of us start to get frustrated. In other words, he was very good at what he did and knew how to do it, and what he brought to it was not working that day. Things were slipping out of control. We are competent and we know what we are to do, but we find things slipping out of our control. Then he gets this note from his wife, and I cannot help but think that he knows that things are about to go from bad to worse. The difference between the situation that Pilate was in and what we outlined in the first paragraph is that Pilate was blind to the reality of God. When we have those bad days, maybe there is a sense where we need to stand back and ask what God is trying to tell us through it. It may be as what seems as our world is collapsing around us that God is sending a message to us. We can get as pig-headed as Pilate and close ourselves as to what God is trying to do in our life. And maybe just say, I'm going to try a little harder and push a little bit more to get what needs to be done. There are times when the wheels of our life are falling off, and that just maybe, we need to consult the master mechanic about what is happening, what is going